It all begins in a world where dungeons emerged over 100 years ago, ushering in an era dominated by monsters. To adapt, certain individuals awaken special abilities known as skills. Desperate, the protagonist grabs a professor's clothes. He tries to explain that if he perfects his tuning technique, a single skill could serve multiple purposes. But to prove it, he needs a formal recommendation from the professor in charge. Instead, the professor takes the papers and casually burns the entire research project right in front of him. The professor sneers, telling the protagonist that someone of his low caliber is utterly worthless. He makes it brutally clear that he won't waste his breath reading trash written by a low-class mage. The protagonist stands there in shock, realizing that in this society, a mage's worth is measured strictly by their academic record. Those blessed with powerful innate skills graduate from top institutions and live elite lives. Meanwhile, the less fortunate end up ruined, cast out onto the streets without a single chance to turn their lives around. With this, the grim reality of the world finally sinks in. The professor barks that a skill's performance is absolute, calling the concept of tuning completely absurd. He even accuses our protagonist of trying to scam research grants with half-baked ideas. Tearing up the papers, the professor scoffs at the sheer audacity of a low-class failure trying to present at a conference. He mocks that it would be more dignified for him to just go beg for loose change. Later, as snow begins to fall, he seeks shelter in a filthy, secluded alleyway deep in the city. Shivering violently from the freezing cold, the boy tries desperately to keep himself warm. Furious, he kicks a trash can, seething over how those elites can just treat people like garbage. He can't accept how they completely blind themselves to his technique, something that could give untalented mages a real fighting chance. Suddenly, a mocking voice rings out, celebrating the discovery of a perfect punching bag. It's a pair of thugs, and they look ready to beat our protagonist to a pulp. Without warning, one of them sucker punches the boy with all his might. Watching him collapse, the accomplice asks with a hint of hesitation if it's safe to beat him this badly. The ringleader brushes it off, claiming that a loser in rags like these clearly has no future anyway. He mutters that even if they end him, nobody will care enough to notice. Hearing that, the accomplice simply nods, completely unmoved. Battered, bruised, and pinned to the freezing ground, the protagonist glares up at them with pure hatred. Spotting an opening, he conjures a glowing orb of blue energy in the palm of his hand. The thug notices the mana and mocks him, asking if the punching bag actually thinks it can fight back. His partner warns him that if a lowlife like him touches a student from Tenho University, he won't even be safe hiding in the gutters. Clutching his spell, the boy grits his teeth in sheer frustration. He knows he could easily wipe the floor with these punks if he just used his tuning technique. But because academic status is absolute in this world, he lets his magic dissipate, knowing he can never defy the elite. With no other choice, the protagonist scrambles to his feet and runs as fast as his legs can carry him. Desperate, he cries out for help as he bursts out toward the main street. He finally makes it to the sidewalk, begging passers-by to call the police. Instead, a mother pulls her child away, warning him not to end up a useless loser like that. While the boy nods and promises to study hard, before he can take another step, the thug yanks him right back into the darkness, barking at him not to run away. He slams the boy hard against the concrete, sending his head cracking into the brick wall. With a heavy thud, the protagonist collapses to the ground, completely unconscious. Realizing they might have gone too far, the thugs panic, thinking they accidentally killed him, and flee into the night. The protagonist is left bleeding out in the freezing snow, his consciousness slowly slipping away. Clenching his fist, he wonders bitterly, is being born without talent or a golden academic pedigree really a sin worthy of death? Even with crowds passing by the edge of the alley, not a single soul stops to help. Left to die like a sewer rat, his heart burns with absolute indignation at how rigged and unfair this world is. As he takes what feels like his final agonizing breath, he laments fading away in such a miserable, forgotten place. Suddenly, the bleak darkness vanishes, replaced by a warm, sunlit afternoon. The protagonist finds himself resting against a large tree. He bolts awake, gasping for air in sheer panic. He frantically examines his hands and torso, completely bewildered to find himself perfectly intact and alive. Looking around at the familiar campus layout, his jaw drops as he realizes he is standing in Tokunada Academy. This is the exact same school building he graduated from a whole decade ago. It makes no sense. He remembers clearly that this entire block was demolished and remodeled over 10 years ago. With wide eyes, the pieces begin to click together, and a wild suspicion crosses his mind. His train of thought shatters when a frantic, crying voice begs someone to stop. An aggressive shout barks back, telling the victim to shut up, instantly drawing his attention to a commotion nearby. Just a short distance away, a helpless girl is cornered against the wall by 3 upperclassmen, pleading with them to leave her alone. The ringleader waves a card with a sadistic grin, dangling her student ID just out of reach to mock her despair. The bully sneers that without this, she won't even be able to buy scraps from the cafeteria, yanking her up roughly by her hair. He mockingly asks if she wants her precious ID back. Terrified, she squeals and shuts her eyes as he tells her she'll only see it again once she pays up what she owes them. The thug barks arrogantly, shouting that low-class failures from Class F don't have human rights. Before he can even finish his sentence, a streak of blue magic strikes him dead in the face. The sheer impact sends him flying backward, skidding across the pavement and crashing onto his back in front of everyone. His lackeys panic and yell out his name, scrambling over to help him up. The 3 thugs dust themselves off, seething with rage, as they look around to see who dared fire a magic projectile at them. Still standing calmly by the tree, Kazuki keeps his hand outstretched, wisps of mana dissipating from his fingertips. Spotting him, one of the lackeys points in absolute shock, stammering that there's no way a spell could reach from that distance. The leader wipes his bruised face, muttering that a magic projectile has a strict limit of 30 meters, meaning the kid must be using a completely different skill. Kazuki begins walking toward them, relieved to find his teenage body light and full of energy. Checking his status windows, he confirms his tuning magic works perfectly. By completely sacrificing the spell's firepower, he maximized its range to bridge the distance. The girl on the ground looks up, instantly recognizing her savior. "Kazuki," she gasps. Kazuki stares at his mana-infused palm. He retained every single ounce of advanced knowledge from his past life. With this realization, he smiles. This time, he actually has the power to change his destiny. He remembers the burning humiliation of having his life's work burned away, just because he lacked elite credentials. Clenching his fist tightly, he realizes this regression is the ultimate second chance. He resolves to climb straight to the absolute top of the academy and rewrite his miserable fate once and for all. Fueled by determination, Kazuki walks calmly toward the group of bullies. The leader snarls as he scrambles to his feet, hurling insults completely blindsided by the ambush. But when he takes a closer look at Kazuki, he realizes the kid is just a bottom-tier failure from the lowest class. The bully laughs out loud, mocking Kazuki as the king of trash, who can only cast the weakest spell in existence. He threatens to report the unauthorized attack, barking that a lowlife like him will be expelled on the spot. Kazuki doesn't flinch. He just tilts his head and calmly asks, "Are you sure you want to do that?" One of the lackeys mutters about how weird that spell felt, but the other snaps that they should just beat this meddler to a pulp. The leader is infuriated by Kazuki's confidence, assuming the kid got cocky after landing one lucky shot. Yet, seeing something dangerous in the boy's eyes, the leader decides to sneak away, throwing back a hollow threat that Kazuki will regret this for the rest of his life. His henchmen quickly follow suit, leaving the girl behind as they retreat. Back inside the classroom, a teacher is slamming his clipboard down, screaming that everyone in the room is the absolute scum of society. He barks that they have zero future and should count their blessings they're even allowed to sit in his lectures. Sitting at his desk, Kazuki listens to the man drone on about how they need to show proper gratitude. Looking out the window, Kazuki can't help but find the teacher's predictable power tripping almost nostalgic. He remembers how the academy ruthlessly segregates everyone into classes based strictly on innate skill, trapping him in the very bottom tier. This room houses the worst-rated students in the entire school, openly mocked as the absolute bottom of the barrel. Kazuki knows exactly how the system works. They are kept around purely as a warning for the elites of what failure looks like. Suddenly, the teacher catches him looking away and snaps, infuriated that a bottom-tier loser has the audacity to ignore his lecture. Determined to put him in his place, the man decides to humiliate the boy in front of the entire class. Barking Kazuki's name, the teacher orders him up to the front to solve question number 5. The boy stands up without a word and walks up to the massive, complex equation written on the blackboard. The teacher smirks internally, knowing he pulled an advanced university-level question that even he doesn't know how to solve step by step. Glaring at the student, the teacher scoffs that this is what happens when a lowborn slacker disrespects an elite educator. He taunts him, asking if a simple equation is already too much for his tiny brain. But Kazuki cuts through the smug silence, answering flatly. The result is 689. The teacher looks down at his answer key and freezes in pure panic. It's a perfect match. He stares at the page, completely unable to accept reality. Seizing the moment, the protagonist smiles innocently and asks, "Professor, could you write out the detailed breakdown on the board? I'd love to learn from your method." He is playing the man beautifully, leveraging a critical piece of information from his future knowledge. The university that published this archive problem only ever released the final answer key, never the full proof. Kazuki hands the marker back and asks with a calm, polite smile, "Is something wrong, Professor?" He has him dead to rights. The teacher stammers, sweating profusely as he makes up a pathetic excuse about misreading the textbook to hide his sheer embarrassment. Pure rage consumes the man. His ego cannot handle being utterly clown-walked by a bottom-tier student. He fiercely swears to himself that he will make this brat pay dearly for making a fool out of him. Later that afternoon, the class gathers out on the training grounds for practical combat drills. The instructor struts out with an imposing posture, introducing a special guest to lead the drill. He announces that a top student from the upper classes will be assisting today. The teacher puts on a show of apologizing for taking up his valuable time, while Iwaki responds with nauseatingly fake humility. Playing his part perfectly, the bully smiles warmly, claiming he is honored to help guide those less fortunate than himself. Right on cue. The instructor singles out Kazuki, dragging him into the center under the pretext that the lowest-ranked student needs the most guidance. The man barks that Kazuki deserves a truly thorough hands-on lesson. Kazuki sees right through the transparent setup. He just nods calmly and steps forward into the ring. Placing a hand on his elite student's shoulder, the teacher loudly reminds him that this is strictly an educational match. But his eyes carry a malicious undertone as he commands him to ensure the lesson isn't cut short too quickly. Iwaki smiles with sickening enthusiasm, nodding that he understands the assignment perfectly. The teacher walks away with a sinister grin, having secretly ordered his thug to brutally injure the boy. He knows full well that a penniless lower-class kid could never afford the high-grade healing magic needed to recover. His plan is to have Kazuki carried straight from the infirmary onto the academy's official expulsion list for failing health. Watching from the sidelines, classmates whisper that this is exactly what happens when a nobody tries to play the hero. The girl he saved earlier watches from the crowd, her hands clenched in deep anxiety as the match is called. Iwaki steps up with a smug grin, asking if he's ready to receive his lesson. The protagonist remains completely unbothered, replying coolly that he's looking forward to it. With both fighters square in the arena, the instructor raises his hand and drops it to signal the start. Iwaki instantly channels his mana, encasing the upper half of his body in a dense sheet of level 1 stone armor. The bully charges forward, mocking that a trash-tier loser who only knows magic projectile needs a severe reality check. Completely unfazed, Kazuki just gives a calm, slight nod in response to the trash talk. Iwaki rushes in blind, completely certain that his defenses could never be broken by such a pathetic baseline spell. The protagonist raises his index finger, pointing it straight at the oncoming threat. "I wouldn't be so sure about that," he states. He instantly focuses his mana into the tip of his finger, gathering a bright, condensed spark of light. The thug throws a devastating, rock-heavy punch, screaming for the rookie to get out of his sight. In this world, it is common knowledge that a skill's baseline performance is rigidly fixed regardless of who uses it. Attributes like raw power, range, and velocity are locked into place by the system from birth. That's exactly why everyone believes innate talent and raw mana capacity are the only metrics that matter. With his fingertip glowing brighter, Kazuki smiles internally. Your logic is completely right for this world's standard, he thinks. Watching the stone fist bear down on him, he knows a standard magic projectile wouldn't even leave a scratch. But he triggers his tuning technique, dropping the spell's travel speed to 0 and reallocating all system resources directly into pure destructive power. He remembers the bitter past where raw talent decided who ruled and who bled in this cruel society. Condensing the entire spell into a single point, Kazuki unleashes a laser-focused, devastating blast right into his opponent's chest. The brutal impact shatters the solid stone armor like cheap glass, sending Iwaki coughing up spit in utter disbelief. His absolute defense crumbles into dust as the heavyweight is blasted off his feet, crashing violently onto the dirt. With smoke still curling from his fingertip, Kazuki looks down at him. He is going to systematically dismantle the common sense of this entire academy. Later, when they return to the classroom, a heavy silence falls as every single student glares at the rookie. Noticing the intense stares, he realizes he might have overdone it a bit out in the training yard. But with only a single year left before graduation, he knows he can't afford to play nice if he wants to force his way into the upper classes. Right then, the girl he rescued earlier walks over holding her lunchbox, nervously asking if she can sit next to him. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to show a bowl of slop served to the lower-class students as a reminder of their status. A pack of elite students surrounds a lower-class boy, jeering at him because his pathetic stipend isn't even enough to buy a decent meal. Outside in the pouring rain, several bottom-tier students are forced onto their knees on the freezing concrete. The ringleader points a finger right in their faces, barking that failures have no right to complain and must obey the elite in absolute silence. Before he can finish his sentence, a localized, blinding beam of light strikes him directly between the legs, causing him to let out a blood-curdling shriek. The bully collapses into the mud, writhing in pure agony while his friends look around in absolute horror. Hidden behind a distant corridor pillar, Kazuki keeps his hand outstretched, satisfied that his fine-tuning allowed him to extend the spell's range perfectly without throwing off his aim. He knows that even baseline skills offer infinite possibilities if properly calibrated, and he will use that fact to take over this school. Beside him, the girl panics, whispering a frantic warning about the consequences if anyone traces that spell back to him. "Relax," he smiles. He tells her to keep it between them, reassuring her that nobody will ever look twice at the kid labeled with the weakest magic on campus. With the trash cleared out of the way, he suggests they get back to their lunch, and she blushes, nodding shyly. The two sit under the cool shade of a massive oak tree, enjoying the rare quiet on the campus lawn. As they eat, she breaks the silence, softly thanking him for stepping in to save her yesterday. Taking a bite of his lunch, Kazuki waves it off, telling her not to overthink it since he just did what he felt like doing. He looks at her and asks if that's the only reason she approached him, warning her that associating with a marked man like him will bring heat from the upperclassmen. She looks away, blushing furiously as she mutters that she just wanted to show proper gratitude. Chewing his food, he notes that she's surprisingly polite for someone trapped in this place. In his past life, they had never spoken a single word during their school days. He had only run into her long after graduation. Back then, during his decades of exhaustive tuning research, he had thoroughly studied accounts of rare and anomalous skills. Kagami had been one of the very few unique ability holders who actually agreed to help him map out his data. Snapping back to the present, Kazuki shifts gears, bringing up next week's practical exam, which requires students to form pairs. She nods, confirming she knows the schedule all too well. He cuts straight to the point and invites her to team up with him, catching her completely off guard. Watching her freeze, he reminds himself that innate traits manifest early, meaning she already possesses her legendary anomalous ability right now. As she stammers in confusion, Kazuki decides to lay his cards on the table to convince her. Without beating around the bush, he leans in and reveals he knows she harbors the incredibly rare Stasis Eye. Kagami instantly goes pale, gasping as she asks how on earth he found out about her most heavily guarded secret. He brushes off her question, noting that with a high-tier anomalous trait like that, it's a complete joke that she's stuck at the bottom of the school hierarchy. With a reassuring smile, he extends his hand to seal the partnership. Kazuki tells her that having a partner with her specific tactical utility by his side would make this exam a breeze. But she lowers her head in shame, muttering that despite her eye, she's still considered a failure because her total spell pool is locked at just 2. He understands her insecurity. This broken society judges a mage's entire lifespan based solely on the raw quantity of spells they unlock at birth. The baseline standard for a standard citizen is a pool of 4 distinct spells. To snap her out of it, Kazuki chuckles and points to himself. "Look at me. I have exactly 1 baseline skill, and it's the absolute weakest one in the system." She looks down, admitting she kept her ability completely hidden out of absolute terror of crushing expectations and scrutiny. Clutching her skirt, she pours her heart out, crying that a rare trait means nothing when you only have 2 spells to your name. Haunted by memories of former classmates calling her a broken anomaly, she confesses her dread of being publicly branded a defective waste of space. Trembling with insecurity, Kagami shrinks back, terrified that if she tries her hardest, the reality of the elite tiers will just crush her completely. Kazuki listens to her breakdown calmly, then locks eyes with her. "Then let's break the system. I'm taking us straight into Class B in this next exam." Keeping his hand firmly extended, he repeats his invitation, asking if she's ready to finally step out of the shadows with him. Without waiting for her to overthink it, he adds that their biggest hurdle won't be the monsters, but the dominant student factions. Kagami blinks, completely unfamiliar with the term. Kazuki explains that since Class F is completely cut off from school politics, it makes sense she's never heard of them. He outlines how these elite syndicates are organized solely to cartelize and monopolize the top grades every semester. He reveals the ugly truth. They run massive, coordinated cheating networks during written tests and prearrange the outcomes of combat trials to guarantee high marks for their own members. She calls it an absolute scam and asks how the administration allows it. But Kazuki counters that their leadership has the faculty bought and paid for. A dark silhouette crosses Kazuki's mind. The untouchable leader running the cheating ring behind the scenes. He notes that almost every single prominent upperclassman is entrenched in this dirty network. Anxiety grips her again. She realizes that even though they are running a pair trial, they will effectively be fighting against dozens of coordinated high-tier opponents. But a confident, sharp smirk cuts across Kazuki's face. "Don't worry," he says. "I already have the perfect counter-strategy mapped out." Meanwhile, across campus, a panicked scout sprints toward the main academy pavilion, shouting at the top of his lungs. He bursts into a courtyard gathered with elite students, desperately pushing through to reach a red-haired boy. Before the scout can even sputter out his report, one of the elite lackeys floors him with a brutal punch to the jaw. The scout collapses into the dirt, clutching his bleeding mouth, while the attacker casually cracks his knuckles over him. The enforcer barks that elites shouldn't have to waste their breath listening to low-tier garbage panicking over nothing. Trembling in sheer terror and pain, the fallen scout stammers out a pathetic apology. The redhead turns his back on the mess, commanding the scout to get out of his sight and never bring unverified noise to his presence again. Stepping forward, the leader narrows his eyes, taking a sudden interest in the rumor as he whispers Kazuki's name. With a sinister smile, he decides that if this low-born rookie keeps pushing his luck, he'll personally have to squash him. After all, as a top-ranked elite, Neo effectively rules over the Academy's underground hierarchy as its undisputed king. On the morning of the exam, the entire student body gathers anxiously before a monumental silver gate. A stern female instructor steps up to the platform, officially opening the practical combat trial. She outlines the parameters. Teams must clear the designated dungeon zone by working strictly alongside their registered partners. Pointing toward a massive, swirling blue portal, she explains that every monster slain will award points based on its threat tier. The fundamental mechanic is absolute. The points for a kill are credited solely to the individual who delivers the explicit final blow. At the tallying phase, individual scores will be combined to calculate the pair's final score. Hearing the high stakes, students swallow hard, tightening their gear as they prepare for the chaos inside. With a sharp motion, the instructor raises her arms, declaring the practical examination officially open. The second the barrier drops, the crowd surges forward in a frantic stampede toward the blue vortex. In the mad dash, an aggressive upperclassman shoves right through them, colliding hard with Kagami. She loses her footing and drops to the grass, as voices shout at Kazuki to get out of the way if he's going to move like a turtle. Ignoring the insults flying from the passing elite students, Kazuki smoothly grabs her hand and pulls her right back up. Meanwhile, a distinct trio of elite students strolls up at a leisurely pace, completely unbothered by the rush. They stride confidently over and deliberately stop right in the center of the shimmering portal gateway. Linking up, they form a solid human wall, physically blocking the lower-class students from passing through. Watching the gridlock, Kazuki instantly clocks what's happening. The syndicate has set up a checkpoint, using a verbal code to let only faction members inside first. He realizes that anyone outside their network is going to be pinned at the starting line to ruin their clear times. As the timer begins counting down, the trapped students start shouting in panic, terrified of losing out on early spawns. Kagami clutches his arm, terrified they're losing valuable points, but Kazuki just stands there with total composure, telling her there's absolutely no reason to panic. Exuding supreme confidence, Kazuki casually suggests letting the desperate crowd bottleneck themselves inside first. He knows a key detail. The true high-tier monstrous elites from the upper academy aren't even participating in this lower block exam. With Neo out of the equation for this zone, Kazuki smiles and tells her this trial is going to be a walk in the park. Once the path clears out, the smug checkpoint trio decides their job is done and turns to enter the portal. They dive into the glowing vortex side by side, eager to claim the remaining spawns. Seeing the entrance finally clear, Kazuki notes that the main wave has finally dispersed. With the gate completely open, the duo walks up calmly and steps through the silver shimmering threshold with ease. Stepping out onto the other side, they find themselves enveloped by a dense, eerily silent forest biome. Kazuki turns to Kagami and gives her the signal to initiate the strategy they mapped out earlier. Nodding, Kagami immediately unleashes her level 2 radar magic, casting a massive purple pulse that expands outward like a dome. Kazuki steps up behind her, placing his hand gently on her shoulder blade, as he quietly activates his signature tuning technique. Manipulating the system data internally, he completely tanks her skill's target resolution and duration metrics. With those system resources freed up, he shunts all the power into range, violently expanding the pulse's coverage across extreme distances. Kagami gasps, her mind reeling as her sensory map explodes in size, granting her an absurdly massive view of the entire zone. She has been taught since childhood that a native trait's metrics can only be elevated by raising the spell's overall grade level. To her, that rule is the foundational, unshakable law governing every single mage in existence. Yet she swallows hard, realizing Kazuki just completely re-architected her spell's internal parameters without altering its tier grade at all. As Kazuki pulls his hand back, she stares at him in absolute awe of this impossible manipulation of raw mana. Looking at her partner, a chill runs down her spine as she realizes the sheer danger if the Academy ever discovered what he can do. If this method is ever leaked to the public, the rigid hierarchy structuring their entire civilization will collapse instantly. Focusing back on the trial, Kazuki cracks his knuckles and begins preparing his own customized spell output. He completely drops his magic projectile's offensive damage to 0 and minimizes its velocity, shunting every point of resource into structural duration and placement range. With the adjustment locked, a small glowing sphere pops from his finger, hovering completely motionless in midair. He rapidly conjures dozens of them, charting a glowing linear pathway that arches high up into the canopy. Without a second thought, he leaps onto the first glowing bead, using the zero-velocity projectile as a completely solid platform to sprint upward. With practiced agility, Kazuki bounds from one luminous orb to the next, scaling his way into the sky. Kagami stands below, her jaw completely dropped at the brilliant, surreal creativity of turning baseline offensive projectiles into literal stepping stones. By stripping away the kinetic impact entirely, the floating orbs function as flawless, stable footholds. Ready to play her part, Kagami focuses her gaze upward, manifesting the glowing irises of her Stasis Eye. Instantly, Kazuki's momentum freezes mid-air, locking him perfectly in place at the apex of a high jump. Her anomalous trait allows her to instantly lock the coordinates of any object she focuses her sight on. While the rule states it cannot freeze a living body directly, she circumvents this perfectly by locking the space occupied by his boots. With his footwear securely anchored to the spatial grid, the protagonist stands completely stable, suspended high above the forest floor. Perched up in the air, he calls down to her, noting that it would have been impossible to aim accurately while simultaneously generating footpaths. With his platform stabilized by her eye, Kazuki shifts his tuning menu, lowering individual blast radiuses to stack everything into terminal range and armor penetration. Tracking the area from the ground via her map, Kagami shouts out the precise coordinates of 3 monster spawns heading their way. Grinning at her spot-on call-out, Kazuki praises her excellent mapping work, shaping the mana around his fingertip into a high-caliber linear rifle profile. The rookie fires precision bursts of light straight down through the foliage. The piercing blue beams cut clean through the brush, sniping stone gargoyles and avian monsters with lethal velocity. Seeing the points register on his HUD, Kazuki smiles as the first 3 threat signatures are instantly wiped from the sector map. Dropping lightly back onto the grass, he suggests they rotate to the next sector immediately, and his partner nods, full of newfound confidence. A short while later, they stumble onto a clearing to find a dozen lower-class students unconscious on the ground. Standing over the defeated students is the exact same checkpoint trio that was blocking the portal earlier. The moment they spot Kazuki and Kagami, the thugs waste no time, immediately launching massive earth boulders and heavy lightning bolts at them. Reacting instantly on instinct, Kazuki grabs Kagami's waist and pulls her clear, shouting a warning as the combined elemental spell tears through their position. The faction leader laughs maliciously, gloating that he anticipated the rookie's exact evasion vector. Kagami gasps in terror as the guided spell curves midair, tracking them down as she screams for him to watch out. The massive solid boulder rips across the grass, pivoting sharply to slam right into Kazuki's blind spot. Keeping his hand outstretched, the upperclassman pours his entire mana pool into the guiding lock, confident this strike will finish the brat off. The heavy mass detonates against the ground in a violent explosion of dirt and rock fragments. As the smoke clears, Kazuki stands completely untouched. He scoffs, pointing out that based on baseline spell metrics, the tracking arc missed his position by a clean 3 centimeters. The leader breaks into a cold sweat, terrified that a bottom-tier trash-level kid just calculated his spell's tracking geometry down to the millimeter. His lackeys panic, stammering that there's no way a regular student could memorize the detailed frame data of another person's unique spell. Losing his mind, the leader screams hysterically, trying to convince himself that the perfect evasion was just a total fluke. In his spiraling mind, the thug begins to realize the absolute nightmare of going up against a pure statistical genius. Shaking from the psychological impact, he fiercely rejects the idea that a high-tier analyst is hiding in the garbage class. Breaking the heavy silence, Kazuki narrows his eyes, deducing that this syndicate alliance was formed for the sole purpose of farming low-tier students for easy points. Raising his right hand, Kazuki notes that he initially had zero intention of interfering with other teams' scores. But as his finger sparks with blue tuning energy, he warns them that since they initiated hostilites, he'll be returning the favor tenfold. Driven by pure survival instinct, the leader desperately floods his channels with mana, trying to erect a heavy stone defense. But Kazuki tunes his spell's casting delay to absolute 0, completely overriding his opponent's reaction window. Before the stone armor can even manifest, a high-velocity beam cracks the ringleader cleanly across the forehead, knocking him out cold. Stepping over the twitching bodies, Kazuki casually explains that he split the spell's impact vector into 4 low-yield charges so the blunt trauma wouldn't cause any permanent brain damage. Looking back at Kagami, he notes that they still have a strict point quota to fulfill for their own grade. With that, the duo walks away, leaving the thugs to fend for themselves against any passing wandering spawns. Groaning on the dirt, the leader groggily blinks open his eyes, utterly confused by Kazuki's departing words. Clutching his bleeding forehead, the fallen thug spits out a bloody tooth, muttering a dark, hollow laugh that these two rookies have absolutely no idea what's waiting for them further in. He reveals that the upper-year students have likely already gathered all the monsters in one place to monopolize the hunt. The faction's plan is to allow only affiliated students to divide the creatures peacefully among themselves. Completely confident, the attacker insists that any points the failures could have earned on the exam are already out of reach. According to the villain, there are no scores left to claim anywhere in this training dungeon. Upon hearing that, Kagami clenches her fists in outrage, finally realizing the gravity of the situation. She deeply regrets her helplessness, confessing she truly believed she could change by staying by Kazuki's side. But the upperclassman pushes himself up from the ground with difficulty and sneers at the pair, claiming it's impossible for low-class trash to ever change their lives. Instantly, another blue magic blast strikes the bastard dead on to shut him up. With his finger still raised and smoking, Kazuki tells his partner not to worry about any of that. Exuding confidence, the mage assures her that everything is still going perfectly according to his calculations. Kagami asks if they can really do anything about the situation, and Kazuki replies that they just need to exploit the weakness in the enemy's system. Confused, she asks what exactly the flaw in this massive rigging scheme could be. The protagonist explains that grouping so many students together sounds great in theory, but everything easily falls apart if a certain premise is broken. Stopping at the edge of a rocky cliff, Kazuki surveys the area and decides it is the perfect vantage point. Down below, dozens of elite students have gathered in an open field to corner and slaughter the monsters. Watching the scene, the girl notes that their defenses are ironclad and there is no way to strike head-on. However, her partner crouches at the edge of the rock, completely disagreeing with her assessment. Focusing a brilliant blue light at the tip of his finger, he warns her that his move to shatter the enemy's strategy is ready. Without hesitation, the boy unleashes a long beam of radiant energy, shooting it straight into the forest battlefield. The attack pierces through the air and strikes one of the surrounded monsters dead on, stealing the kill right from under the elite group's nose. The upperclassmen are startled out of their wits when the creature is obliterated out of nowhere behind them, and they look around in utter confusion. One of the boys frantically points up toward the cliff, alerting the others. The group is left in disbelief by an attack of such lethal precision from such an absurd distance. Focused on his target, the protagonist knows that the more he extends his range through tuning, the more the power and speed of his magic drop. Even so, Kazuki knows the remaining damage is more than enough to finish off creatures already weakened by the elites. Panicking on the field, the upperclassmen realize the rookie will steal every single point if they don't stop him right now. Trying to salvage his own grade, another student suggests they rush off to hunt creatures on their own before it's too late. Furious at the fracturing of their alliance, one boy blasts his partner with magic, accusing him of trying to hog all the rewards for himself. Seeing the chaotic infighting, a third member tries to step in, warning that this is no time to turn on each other. But panic has completely gripped the faction, and the students begin violently turning on one another with out-of-control magic. Firing more projectiles from afar, the mage notes that this alliance was built solely on mutual interest to secure top grades. He is certain that for a crooked scheme like this to succeed, there needs to be a large enough pool of profits to distribute. However, once they face a shortage where the rewards cannot satisfy everyone at once, the system inevitably cannibalizes itself as each person desperately scrambles to protect their own share of points. Watching the chaos below, Kagami is amazed by how effortlessly her partner manipulated so many opponents. Awe-struck by his brilliance, she can't believe someone this talented had been stuck in the academy's lowest class all this time. Back on the field, the free-for-all rages on until one of the students is suddenly blindsided from behind and severely wounded. Startled by the horrific sound, the remaining faction members spin around, failing to understand where the surprise attack came from. Frozen in utter shock, one of the upperclassmen stands paralyzed with terror as he faces the new threat emerging from the darkness. Out of the forest shadows, a colossal bear with glowing red eyes and a sinister aura emerges, ready to trample the teenagers. Despair grips the students as they scream in terror, while Kagami also panics up on the rocky cliff. Visibly irritated, Kazuki clicks his tongue, annoyed that this massive monster showed up right in the middle of his play. Staring down the beast, the protagonist quickly notices that this creature's presence is on a completely different level compared to the other prey. With an ear-splitting roar of fury, the monstrous bear unleashes an unmanageable wave of brute force. The sheer danger is so extreme that the electronic system broadcasts a general emergency alert, warning of an irregular monster invasion. The message urgently orders all students to evacuate immediately, stating that elite faculty reinforcements are already en route to the dimension. Seeing the flashing warning, she instantly understands the true peril of crossing paths with an aberration like this. Her partner calmly explains that these beasts are born from sudden mutations within the continuous use training dungeons. He deduces that the creature survived previous sweeps by the instructors, hiding in the dark until its body underwent a complete transformation. According to Kazuki, this bear's destructive capabilities far exceed anything the Academy prepared for the official exam. Turning away from the cliff with a serious expression, the boy flatly states he has no intention of playing the honorable hero. Yet, he glances back down at the battlefield, admitting he can't just stand by and watch them get slaughtered. Concerned for her safety, the rookie tells his teammate to stay well hidden up there until it's over. Down in that chaotic arena, the beast unleashes sheer terror and agony, even though defeating it won't grant extra credit to anyone. Determined to go all out, Kazuki bravely leaps off the cliff, declaring that school rules no longer apply to this fight. As he plummets through the air, he notes that he couldn't drag his partner into the center of an imminent danger zone. Seeing her only friend plunge straight into the abyss, the purple-haired girl reaches out her arm, crying out to him. In the grim forest clearing, hysterical screams echo as students desperately order the wounded to flee for their lives. The proud elite hunters now stumble away in tears and sheer panic as the massive, ravenous shadow looms over the tall grass. The irregular creature bares its venomous fangs, roaring relentlessly before lunging at the slow, defenseless students. Driven by primal rage, it charges heavily toward a poor bastard who collapsed out of sheer exhaustion. Paralyzed, the injured prey freezes in the face of imminent death until the final split second, when a saving voice commands a magic activation. Aiming his glowing finger firmly into the air, the protagonist strips all speed from the projectile, focusing entirely on multiplying the density of his blue mana. Landing like a human anchor between the beast and the victim, he alters his spell's core structure to force a brand new function out of his basic projectile. The basic bolt spins rapidly, expanding into a sturdy, perfectly disc-shaped shield that halts the fatal strike right at the moment of impact. saved by the barrier that materialized right before his eyes. The loser who had previously mocked him gapes in utter disbelief at the miraculous rescue. Those fleeing the chase skitter to a halt, digging their heels in as they watch in awe. They cannot comprehend how a mere nobody is holding back such a swirling, rampant horror. Behind the glowing barrier, the boy grates his teeth as massive claws scrape violently against his defense, his entire arm instantly going numb under the suffocating pressure pushing against his limbs. The strategist remains perfectly composed, noting with satisfaction that this creature's raw, unbridled threat eclipses every standard monster in the dungeon. The furious beast rears back, raising a massive claw in an implacable arc, determined to crush the annoying, petulant human. Enraged by the barrier, the bear bashes the light shield brutally as the boy strains to withstand the impact. As the beast lunges again, the mage is startled by the absurd speed of such a massive animal. With no time to lose, he quickly channels energy into his hands to prepare his tuning technique. Firing immediately after, the protagonist releases a magic projectile optimized for maximum piercing power. But the blue beam merely grazes the monster's shoulder, leaving a highly superficial wound. Furious, the red-eyed beast growls and glares at its tiny prey, making him realize that even with tuning, his basic magic lacks the firepower to bring the target down. Seizing the opening, the pivoting beast drives forward, swinging a heavy, sweeping claw strike. The boy narrowly evades it, concluding that even a point-blank shot wouldn't solve the problem. Blown back by the shockwave of the onslaught, he admits this fight is going to take some serious work. Just then, the rookie dodges another violent swipe and decides to gamble on a high-risk strategy. Remaining perfectly calm, Kazuki aims his glowing finger straight at his opponent's face. Perfectly composed, the strategist is certain that striking a vital spot will inflict critical damage. Without hesitation, he fires a concentrated beam directly into the colossal creature's eye. The precise hit forces the aberration to roar in agony, reeling backward as it is blinded by the wound. The mage notes the attack connected, but it caused far less damage than expected as the creature becomes completely driven by pain. The beast charges forward with unstoppable rage, trampling everything in its path. The protagonist evaluates the charge, knowing an attack driven entirely by blind instinct leaves massive openings. However, out of the corner of his eye, the boy notices that the injured upperclassman is still collapsed right behind him. Realizing the tactical complication, Kazuki realizes that if he evades the charge now, the student behind him will be crushed instead. Staring down the massive shadow, the mage knows he doesn't have enough time to restructure his energy into a defensive shield. With no viable escape routes, the strategist braces his arms, preparing to minimize the impact and take the hit non-critically. Suddenly, Kagami springs into action with a shout, triggering the binding power of her rare Stasis Eye. The colossal collision kicks up a thick cloud of dust, leaving the boy staring unharmed at the frozen strike. Exploiting this miraculous defense, the rookie channels his strength and shoves the beast's heavy paw aside. Retreating to create some distance, he hears his partner call out his name amidst the frantic chaos. Kazuki sees the girl panting and realizes she used her stasis ability to freeze her uniform fabric into rigid armor. With an incredibly resolute gaze, she tells him she will fight by his side to stop being a helpless bystander. Pleased by her courage, Kazuki jokingly reminds her that taking down this monster won't earn them a single exam point. Even so, Kagami refuses to back down, insisting she won't run away while there are lives to save. Urging caution, she suggests they simply hold the monster at bay until the academy instructors arrive. But her partner steps forward slowly and asks to correct one crucial detail of that safe plan. Pointing his glowing hand toward the enemy, the protagonist declares he never enters a fight unless he is certain of victory. Feeling the magic surge through his veins, he welcomes the breakthrough his innate talent has finally achieved. Suddenly, a dense, overwhelming aura of blue flames erupts, reshaping the battlefield around them. The intense light concentrates at his fingertips, revealing that his modest magic projectile has officially upgraded to level 2 destruction, leaving her awestruck by the blinding radiance. His partner notes that all his attacks up until now had been from the absolute lowest tier of magic. Stunned by the miracle occurring before her eyes, she can hardly believe her classmate leveled up in the high-stakes pressure of absolute chaos. Kazuki calmly explains that he spent his entire life deciphering the hidden mechanics of the power system. According to him, clashing head-on with overwhelming opponents and fully grasping one's own limits accelerates any bottlenecked awakening. The brilliant mage states that combining these two critical factors forces the underlying magical structures to level up, multiplying all base parameters. The rookie notes he can now funnel all his remaining mana reserves directly into a single critical strike. Combining this raw accumulation with his fine-tuning technique, his finger unleashes a reshaped, brutally piercing blast. Sensing the imminent danger, the massive bear lunges forward, trying to swallow the threat whole before it reaches him. A formidable column of blue annihilation surges across the field at an unmatched speed, heading straight for the great beast. The attack crackles with energy and slams into the target's chest, inflicting a deep, catastrophic wound. Unable to withstand the density of the blast, the creature collapses entirely as its internal organs undergo a massive rupture. With victory secured, the protagonist lowers his guard, watching the mountain of muscle lose all strength and topple backward. The giant hits the ground heavily, collapsing into the dust with a massive hole blown through its chest. Marveled by the end of the crisis, the girl sighs, deeply impressed by the staggering leap in his newly awakened destructive power. In that sudden moment of quiet, a system notification abruptly cuts the exam short, calling for an immediate general evacuation. Caught completely off guard by the sudden cancellation, she reacts in surprise while Kazuki processes the premature end of the match. Calculating his lost gains, the mage assesses the high risk of missing his academic promotion due to the rigid exam scoring rules. Walking back calmly, he reflects that sacrificing a few exam points was a fair trade for the lives they managed to save. Later, rescue agents and instructors gather around the defeated beast, trying to make sense of this highly irregular anomaly. They stand in disbelief before the carcass of the irregular monster. The faculty keeps repeating in astonishment the shocking fact that the lowest-ranked student averted a total tragedy. Green with envy toward the disrespectful boy, an arrogant instructor demands to know if there was blatant fraud involved in securing this victory. Rebuking his timid glasses-wearing colleague, a bald instructor mocks his habit of always second-guessing the student's capabilities. Ignoring the blatant swipe, one of the men crosses his arms, demanding an official ruling on the exam scoreboard. The senior instructor dryly points out that according to the footage, the boy defeated a mutant that carries 0 official point value. However, turning around, the chief examiner commends the student's noble character in choosing to protect his peers and proposes granting him a special compensatory reward. With this unprecedented exception on the table, his colleague grins, anticipating a monumental shakeup within the faculty council. With their incredible bonus points officially validated, the pair walks around like the school's newest celebrities, flaunting their promotion to the highly coveted Class B. Seeing the wonderful update on the registry, Kagami cannot hide her emotional face at such a dramatic turning point in her grim fate. Celebrating their newly acquired prestige and resources, they enjoy a rich, abundant platter in the school's high society cafeteria. Savoring his upgraded lifestyle, Kazuki wastes no time devouring food he couldn't have dreamed of affording just a few days ago. She lets out an amused laugh, watching the ravenous speed with which the boy wolfs down massive bites of his hot meal. Smiling quietly at her teasing, he recalls the painful decades of his previous future life, where he routinely skipped restaurant meals just to fund his vital research. However, their well-deserved peace over lunch is interrupted when a massive, suspicious figure taps him on the shoulder. Kagami nearly freezes in fear, staring at the terrifying figure who just ruined their celebratory mood. Turning around in his chair, Kazuki instantly scans the thug's intimidating posture, deducing that this is the absolute kingpin of the Class A academic mafia. Laughing at the flawless deduction, the redhead grins amusedly, praising the quick tactical thinking that defined the exam's sudden savior. Without an invitation, the dangerous intruder plops down with them, claiming that his reputation is only partially accurate. Leaning back casually against the cushioned seat, the arrogant bully boasts of his sovereign position as the shadow ruler of the entire academy. Flashing a menacing smile, Neo drops the small talk, revealing he has already painstakingly analyzed the recordings of Kazuki's battles. Remaining insufferably smug, Neo admits the pair's performance wasn't half bad, casually chewing on a stolen bite of their food. Kazuki simply offers a flat thank you for the hollow compliment. With that, the redhead points his knife toward Kagami, asking if the mage plans on keeping this girl around. Unfazed, the protagonist cuts to the chase, asking where exactly the bully is going with this conversation. Maintaining his smug demeanor, the faction leader acknowledges his raw talent but warns him that his beginner's luck is about to run out. Eyeing his target, the antagonist reminds him that as a fresh arrival in Class B, he should take steps to eliminate any risk of demotion. The boy instantly sees through the speech, realizing this is nothing more than an aggressive, forced recruitment pitch, showing absolute zero interest in the offer. The rookie asks point-blank what happens if he refuses. Dropping into a grim, menacing tone, the upperclassman vows to crush him without mercy. Tired of the meaningless posturing, the strategist lets out a heavy sigh and slides his chair back to stand up. Picking up his lunch tray, he assures the leader he has no intention of exposing the faction's dirty operations, asking only to be left alone. Turning to leave, the boy suddenly stops in his tracks, remembering he forgot to mention an important detail. Kazuki brings up the bully's comment about him just reaching Class B, pointing out that his climb is far from over. Failing to grasp where the rookie is going with this, the faction leader locks his eyes on him, waiting for him to continue. Brimming with absolute confidence, the protagonist declares his intention to climb all the way up to the bully's coveted elite class. Finding this sheer audacity hilarious, Neo bursts into a mocking laugh that echoes across the cafeteria. Leaning back, the upperclassman assesses Kazuki as a terrible potential underling, but notes he will make for excellent entertainment. Ignoring the bait, the protagonist walks away, but the antagonist calls out after him loudly. The leader shoots him a deep, piercing look, warning the rookie that he won't be able to take those words back. Completely unfazed by the threat, the pair continues walking, leaving the table behind as they head for the exit. A heavy tension settles over the empty cafeteria as the faction members crowd around their boss, awaiting his orders. Infuriated by the rookie's sheer nerve, the lackeys ask how they should handle such a blatant display of disrespect. Instantly, the redhead snaps at the group to shut their pathetic mouths. Seething with irritation, the bully forbids his underlings from offering advice with their useless brains. Terrified by his leader's wrath, the lackey bows frantically, apologizing in absolute desperation. Crossing his arms, the antagonist decides he has found the perfect prey, noting that breaking him too quickly would be incredibly boring. Hearing the distinct sound of approaching footsteps, he smirks at the immaculate timing. Concocting an underhanded plot, the upperclassman decides to sick the newcomer directly onto his fresh target. Later on inside the classroom, Kazuki walks down the rows of desks alongside his teammate. Kagami sighs in relief at her desk, arranging her study materials for the next block of classes. Glancing at his partner sitting beside him, Kazuki catches the clear exhaustion etched on her face. She confesses that the curriculum is far more advanced than what they taught in the lowest class, making the coursework incredibly overwhelming. She points out her friend's total composure, and he assures her that he can navigate the upgraded classes with ease. Nearby, a nosy student peers over at them, trying to get a good look at the newly promoted rookie. The classroom gossips whisper about the boy's bizarre advancement, finding it highly suspicious for someone from the absolute bottom to climb so rapidly. Noticing Kagami's visible discomfort with the petty rumors, the strategist tells her to block out the background noise. He assures her that consistently delivering top-tier results will naturally force everyone's opinion to change over time. Right then, a massive commotion echoes from down the hallway, instantly drawing the pair's attention. The protagonist locks his eyes on the classroom door, waiting to see the source of the sudden uproar. Door swings open to reveal Isame, the undisputed strongest student and the #1 ranker of the entire upper academy. The boy instantly recognizes her as the unparalleled genius who never dropped her top rank, the girl destined to become the world's supreme grandmaster. Surprised by the sudden appearance of such royalty, he tries to deduce why a living legend has walked into their modest classroom. Glancing around the room, Isame flatly announces to the students that she is looking for someone specific. Pausing to think, she tilts her head, admitting she has completely forgotten the name of her target. Giving up on her search, the prodigy concludes the trip was a waste of time since she hasn't sensed a single strong presence in the room. Disappointed by the mundane surroundings, the upperclassman turns back toward the exit, muttering that she shouldn't have bothered checking. Taking control of the situation, Kazuki calls out down the classroom aisle, apologizing for the unexpected interruption. She halts instantly, casting her gaze back over her shoulder. Perfectly composed, the boy asks if the student she happens to be looking for might be him. Isame locks her eyes onto the boy, examining him from head to toe in a profound, calculating silence. Scratching her head, she finally admits that name sounds exactly like the one that had slipped her mind. She strides directly toward the protagonist. Noting this makes things much simpler, since he has caught her interest as well. Stopping mere inches from the rookie, the supreme genius openly challenges him to an official duel. Facing her down, the boy is keenly aware of the future timeline where this girl effortlessly rules the entire magical world. Thrilled by this monumental opportunity, he clenches his fists, eager to test the limits of his tuning techniques against the absolute rank 1. Suddenly, an even louder uproar erupts in the hallway, forcing the crowd of onlookers to scatter out of the way. Exuding supreme authority, the school's rank 2 student and student council president steps into view with his arms crossed. The surrounding students are utterly shocked, struggling to comprehend why a second member of the ultimate elite has descended to such a low floor. Adjusting his glasses with immaculate elegance, the president demands an immediate explanation for Isame's presence outside her designated sector, while pointing an unyielding finger at Kazuki. She lies right on the spot, claiming the rookie was the one begging to challenge her to a duel to exploit the president's bureaucratic nature. The president notes that arena duels are perfectly permissible as long as both parties formally consent. Sojiro, seeing someone from the lowest rung of the academy challenge the absolute apex of the food chain, is a highly intriguing twist to witness. To their surprise, Neo enters the hallway, exuding a sinister aura, loudly praising the arrival of such a fiery challenger. The redhead smoothly steers the conversation, mockingly suggesting that the academy's greatest prodigy should at least humor the ambitious rookie. Well aware of the faction leader's notorious reputation, the president questions his true motives, while the thug plays completely innocent. Utterly bored by the endless bickering, Isame concludes that the quickest way to get some peace is to just accept the match, showing zero genuine enthusiasm. She sighs, wanting to wrap this up as fast as possible so she can go take a nap. Seizing the perfect opening, Neo flashes a wicked grin, declaring the term settled and demanding the president's official sanction. Shortly after, the entire group transitions to the academy's massive outdoor training arena. Watching the bizarre escalation, Kagami whispers to Kazuki that she still has no idea how things spiraled this far. Walking beside the protagonist, Sojiro mentions he initially suspected the boy was simply being coerced by the 2 powerhouse upperclassmen. Intrigued by the rookie's unwavering composure, the president asks what his true motive is for provoking such a reckless clash with the absolute rank 1. With his eyes locked on the sprawling dirt arena, the strategist justifies his high-stakes choice to challenge the elite from day 1. Bracing himself for the looming battle, Kazuki admits his burning desire to see if his custom mechanics can punch through such a monstrous force, making the president realize the staggering ambition hiding within this low-class student. The student council president simply adjusts his glasses, acknowledging the non-negotiable terms of the duel. Granting his official authorization, Sojiro tells the challenger to go give it everything he has. With that, the council president turns his attention toward the rank 1 powerhouse. He warns her that this arena is highly regulated, strictly forbidding her from leveling the place with her signature technique. Hearing the restriction, Isame merely glances over her shoulder with an indifferent look. Perfectly confident, she assures him there won't be any need to deploy that level of destruction here. Satisfied with her answer, the upperclassman steps back and calls for the match to begin. Up in the stands, the onlookers scoff, muttering that the rookie has lost his mind, getting this arrogant over a single class promotion. They agree that the newcomer has absolutely no grasp of the astronomical power gap separating them from Class A. Standing in the middle of the crowd, Kagami watches the arena, completely sick with nerves for her partner. Back on the field, the temporary referee raises his hand, preparing the starting signal. The 2 combatants drop into their fighting stances, waiting for the final command. With a swift drop of his arm, the president declares the official start of the showdown. Wasting no time, both duelists unleash their magic bullets simultaneously, utilizing completely different configurations. Right in the center of the arena, the 2 opposing energies collide with an ear-splitting impact. For the absolute first time in her academic career, the untouchable genius actually feels pressure from an opponent's assault. The resulting mana detonation kicks up a violent cloud of dust across the entire battlefield. Exploiting the smokescreen, the strategist asks if he has finally managed to catch her full attention. The students in the audience stand completely shell-shocked, watching a standard low-tier spell clash on equal footing with the school's absolute legend. Kagami relaxes her shoulders slightly, seeing that Kazuki hasn't backed down a single inch against the Apex Elite. Meanwhile, the protagonist analyzes that his opening move succeeded, but he knows he cannot afford to lower his guard. Laser-focused, he calculates exactly how to land a clean direct hit to seize complete control of the match. Instantly, the boy retunes the properties of his magic, unleashing a blindingly fast follow-up shot. However, The supreme prodigy evades the blue projectile with staggering, effortless grace. Analyzing her movement, Kazuki notes that her evasion speed is too absurdly high, even for shots explicitly tuned for maximum velocity. Without hesitation, the rookie switches gears, firing a wide, scattering volley of magic bullets to carpet the area. Even inside the barrage, Isame glides effortlessly across the ground, weaving through every single beam of light without breaking a sweat. Closing the gap in a flash, the upperclassman drives forward and slams a heavy kick right into the rookie's crossed arm guard. The violent impact skids him backward across the dirt, leaving a trail of rising dust. Regaining his footing, he processes how flawlessly his opponent managed to navigate through that massive spread. Putting the pieces together, Kazuki confirms with satisfaction that she is actively deploying her famous evil eye of perception. This incredibly rare ocular trait is the exact reason why Isame is feared as the world's most formidable mage. Armed with data from the future timeline, the boy locks his focus onto the eerie, mysterious glow in her eyes. The ability functions by mapping the exact trajectory of incoming threats, reading the opponent's raw intent and combat malice. By pairing this immaculate prediction with god-tier reflexes, the prodigy becomes virtually untouchable in the arena. Following her display, the rank 1 calmly points out that every single one of his shots missed their mark. Going back on the offensive, she unleashes her own custom spell, infused heavily with ice elemental attributes. To defend himself, the rookie swiftly triggers the barrier modification of his baseline projectile. On the other side of the field, Isame concludes that no matter the opponent's speed, her advanced ocular perception guarantees absolute victory. However, the rookie prepares a new shot, calculating that he only needs to strike in the exact millisecond where her perception eye creates a blind spot. As his magic streaks through the air, the upperclassman notices something highly bizarre about the shape and movement of the blue bolt. The strategist begins firing dozens of consecutive shots, drastically fluctuating the speed and weight of each individual blast. Watching the chaotic downpour, Isame realizes the rookie isn't just toggling between spell tiers like an ordinary mage. The genius finally realizes he is completely shattering standard rules, adjusting the properties of his magic seamlessly on the fly. Yet, even within this erratic bombardment, her seasoned gaze locks onto a core logical pattern. She deduces that his slower projectiles carry overwhelming mass, whereas his high-speed bolts are significantly weaker. As a result, the prodigy decides to completely ignore the slow-moving threats, since they are child's play to evade. Right then, Kazuki hurls a massive piercing sphere of concentrated energy straight at his opponent. Reading the sluggish speed of the blast, she charges straight ahead, letting the beam slide harmlessly past to close the distance. Brushing past the raw destructive power, she primes a fatal counterattack to finish the duel. But the strategist anticipated this exact response, well aware that her perception eye only registers intent hard-coded into the initial trajectory. Executing his final play, he concludes her ocular sight is entirely blind to erratic, automated paths devoid of active malice. To everyone's utter shock, that slow-moving projectile curves sharply in midair, whipping back like a silent boomerang, right into her blind spot. Caught completely off guard from her blind spot, Isame panics as the sudden threat bears down on her. With zero time to react, the rank 1 takes the magic impact full force in her back, stumbling right where she stands. Kazuki announces that his entire setup was orchestrated solely to engineer this single moment of vulnerability. The boy reveals he masked his remote manipulation intent, exposing the catastrophic flaw of her ultimate eye. Finger gunning his hand forward, the rookie relishes having created a flawless opening against the Academy's peak. He locks on for a decisive shot, noting that seeing the future is completely useless if your body cannot physically react in time. Reeling helplessly and visibly shaken, the prodigy desperately tries to manifest an ice barrier to shield herself. However, the protagonist refuses to relent, unleashing his finishing blow while warning her that her defenses are far too slow. At the critical split second, the magic primed at his fingertips suddenly sputters and completely dies out in his hand. Pure shock registers on the boy's face as he tries to diagnose the absurd failure in his mana circulation. Landing safely back on the dirt, she narrowly escapes checkmate, while her opponent deduces that this interference didn't come from her. Left wide open without his magic bullet, the strategist is instantly swallowed up by a brutal, freezing ice attack from the upperclassmen. With the rookie knocked unconscious on the ground, the president calls the match, declaring Isame the official winner. Frustrated by the bizarre turn of events, The bruised rookie pushes himself up from the dirt, cursing the interference. Up in the stands, the crowd laughs, assuming the fighter simply ran completely out of mana and embarrassed himself thoroughly. Hearing their insults, the protagonist knows with absolute certainty that his mana reserves were nowhere near depleted. Clutching the hard dirt, he realizes exactly what happened. Some coward suppressed his ability from outside the boundary line. Breaking through the heavy atmosphere, Kagami dashes frantically across the field to check on Kazuki. Dusting off his clothes, the boy calms his panicked partner down, assuring her he didn't take any lasting damage. Right then, he catches sight of Neo's silhouette slipping away quickly from the spectator railing. Near the exit, the lackeys chuckle over the rookie's loss, convinced their boss sabotaged the match to teach him a lesson. Unleashing a terrifying aura, the faction leader glares at his underlings, threateningly asking if they honestly believe such a brainless theory. The thugs stumble back in utter shock, failing to comprehend his intense fury given the rookie's humiliating defeat. Nearby, a few passing students catch a glimpse of Neo's frightening expression and whisper in fear. Just then, Isame approaches the redhead, demanding to know if he was the one who tampered with the duel. Irritated by the accusation, the faction boss denies it, stating he wouldn't ruin his own chance to gauge the rookie's true capabilities. Accepting his answer, the supreme genius turns on her heel, muttering that it doesn't matter anyway. As she walks away, the girl promises herself that she will never forget the protagonist's name. Left alone on the field, the bully scratches his head in frustration, annoyed that someone picked the absolute worst time to interfere. Intrigued by what he just witnessed, he mentally reviews the final attack his opponent had prepared. Showing a dark sense of excitement, the redhead wonders how the match would have ended and concludes that Kazuki is going to be very interesting. In a change of scenery, Kagami cheers excitedly after finally managing to solve a difficult problem. The two students are sitting at a secluded table inside the academy's massive library. Focused on his studies, the strategist explains that underneath everything, magic mechanics share the same fundamental principles. He reveals that this knowledge can't be found in standard textbooks, noting that he has read most of the academic papers in the field. Utterly shocked by the revelation, the girl can't believe her classmate has studied at such an incredible level. Reverting to his humble demeanor, the boy lies, claiming it is just a hobby and that he doesn't need to study that hard just to pass a test. Relieved, the student is incredibly grateful for the help, admitting the exam covers material their class was never even taught. Encouraged by her progress, she feels confident that she will at least avoid a failing grade on the test. However, the protagonist reminds her that failing means immediate expulsion, so they are going to practice until a passing grade is guaranteed. Suddenly, a student sneaks up behind their table, muttering a rehearsed apology. Deliberately, the gang member tilts his open cup of coffee to spill it all over their notebooks. However, Kazuki reacts in a split second, grabbing the cup firmly before a single drop can spill. Keeping his cool, the strategist sternly warns him about the facility's rules. He reminds the upperclassmen that drinks without lids are strictly forbidden inside the library. Terrified by the rookie's lightning-fast reflexes, the boy stammers an apology and quickly scurries away. Watching the suspicious student flee, Kagami asks, completely confused about what just happened. The boy explains that he intercepted the cup because the upperclassmen had been lingering, waiting for the perfect moment to dump the drink. Piecing it together, the girl instantly concludes that he was a gang member trying to sabotage their study session. To the protagonist, resorting to such a pathetic tactic proves the faction doesn't have the leverage to tamper with the written exams directly. At the end of the day, the duo walks home under the sunset, while the rookie tries not to overthink the situation. Once outside the building, his classmate thanks him profusely for taking the time to help her study. Kazuki assures her it was no trouble at all, since tutoring her served as an excellent review for him as well. Seeing her amazement, the protagonist clarifies that physical strength alone isn't enough, as he needs top academic marks to move up the ranks. In his own thoughts, the time traveler breaks into a cold sweat, admitting that he has simply studied the equivalent of an entire extra lifetime. As they resume walking, the girl asks if his primary goal is to reach Class A. The boy confirms it, revealing that graduating among the absolute elite is merely the baseline requirement for his true objective. Curious about her classmate's ambition, the lower-class student stops in the courtyard and asks what that grand goal is. Gazing at the horizon with determination, the mage reveals his dream of attending Tenhyo University. Kagami is left in utter shock, knowing that it is easily the most prestigious academic institution in all of Japan. Clenching his fist, Kazuki explains that he wants to develop his tuning technique into something that anyone can use. Worried, his classmate warns him that society is deeply entrenched in judging people solely by their innate magical talent. Well aware of the harsh reality, the boy asserts that the world's common sense will fundamentally change once his technique spreads. Enthusiastically, he envisions the dawn of a new era where a lack of innate talent can be completely overcome through sheer effort. Despite his confidence, the lower-class student lowers her head, remembering that such a magical theory is widely condemned as heresy. The strategist agrees, knowing that without proper influence, his research will be dismissed as mere occultism by the faculty. Therefore, he understands that he must establish undeniable academic authority just to force the world to listen to him. Clenching his hand in silent fury, the protagonist vows to tear down this corrupt era that had previously humiliated him for his lack of talent. Returning to a relaxed posture, he says he wants to ensure that no other untalented mage is ever forced to give up on their own future. Moved by her classmate's nobility, the girl looks down and admits that he truly is an incredible person. In contrast, Kagami timidly confesses that she doesn't have any grand ambitions in life beyond simply trying to graduate. Taking a few steps forward, the lower-class student walks ahead slightly, enjoying the evening breeze. Turning back with a sweet smile, she reveals her simple desire to look back on her past without any regrets. She adds that she just wants to be able to feel proud of herself, though she admits it might sound like a very small goal. Walking right behind her, Kazuki immediately disagrees and praises the absolute purity of his friend's goal. Far from there, Neo lounges on an extravagant sofa inside his personal hideout. Before him, the upperclassman from the library bows his head, reporting that he executed the plan as ordered. Unsurprised, the king of the academy scoffs at the situation, already fully aware that his subordinate failed the mission. The gang member trembles in terror before his ruthless boss, abruptly standing up as he desperately tries to justify himself. The redhead coldly orders his lackey to stop acting like a coward over nothing. Approaching his prey with a heavy, suffocating aura, Neo asks if he has ever beaten anyone who actually followed orders. Breaking into a cold sweat, the thug quickly agrees with the leader, desperate to escape physical punishment. However, the antagonist suddenly grabs the boy's face with overwhelming force, instantly eliciting a sharp scream of pain. Slamming the lackey's head down onto the table, the leader informs him that this punishment is strictly for trying to cover up his failure. Releasing the boy, the bully admits he never actually expected a childish trick like that to succeed. Looking out the clubroom window, the antagonist declares that the incident in the library was nothing more than bait. Exuding pure malice, the redhead asserts that he will break the rookie's companions first, shifting his sights to a completely different target. Days later, the dreaded written exams finally begin for the academy's students. Staring down at her paper, Kagami falls into absolute despair, wondering how things could have gotten this bad. Trembling in her seat, the lower-class girl is absolutely certain that she is about to be expelled. At the back of the silent classroom, the clock ticks away mercilessly as time runs out. Checking his wristwatch, the teacher officially calls an end to the exam and orders everyone to put their pens down. Relaxed at his desk, Kazuki crosses his arms, feeling that the incredibly tense atmosphere concluded in a very anticlimactic way. The strategist mentally notes that he spent the entire exam on high alert, fully expecting some form of aggressive sabotage from the upperclassmen. Tapping the stack of test papers on his desk, the instructor announces that the day's session is officially over. Suddenly, a female student raises her hand, urgently calling for the instructor's attention. Adjusting his glasses, the teacher turns around and asks what the issue is this time. Breaking the classroom silence, the student loudly demands that the drawers of Kagami's desk be searched immediately. With the accusation out in the open, the student points directly at Kagami, claiming she caught her cheating during the test. Sitting right behind her, Kazuki understands exactly what is going on. The strategist concludes that the gang faction had targeted his friend from the very moment the test began. Right on cue, another classmate stands up with her hand raised, confirming that she witnessed the exact same thing. Immediately after, two other boys join in, claiming they also witnessed the cheating. Caught completely off guard by the trap, the lower-class girl descends into a panic. Analyzing the situation, the protagonist realizes how easy it is for the upperclassmen to plant false evidence and manipulate the classroom dynamics. Pressing the attack, the initial accuser demands to know if the rookie was hiding something beneath her desk. Desperate, the lower-class student bolts up from her chair, vehemently denying that she cheated. However, her sudden movement causes a slip of paper to tumble directly out of her desk drawer. In pure shock, she instantly recognizes it as a completed answer sheet. Trembling, the girl swears to herself that she never had anything like that hidden there. Taking in the scene, the teacher sternly asks her if she has any explanation for the material found. Staring at the fabricated evidence on the floor, Kagami despairs, knowing she will be formally charged the moment the instructor picks up that paper. To clear up any doubts, the instructor announces he will inspect her desk personally and starts walking down the aisle. Paralyzed, the lower-class girl realizes that her expulsion is imminent unless something changes right now. Meanwhile, his partner assesses the danger and realizes he needs to make that cheat sheet vanish immediately. Preparing his hand, he tunes a magic bullet to be incredibly small, completely silent, and far too fast for the naked eye to track. With a subtle movement beneath his desk, the boy fires the magic bullet directly at the target. Without drawing a single eye, the mage is confident his swift attack completely disintegrated the planted evidence. Hearing the faint noise, his classmate looks back, desperately seeking support from her friend. Arriving at the desk, the bald instructor inspects everything thoroughly and announces that he finds absolutely nothing suspicious. Outraged by the paper's sudden disappearance, the lead accuser slams her hand on her desk and yells that it's impossible, trying to maintain her aggressive stance. The instructor reprimands the upperclassman, sharply reminding her that baseless accusations without evidence will not be tolerated. Relieved to have escaped the trap, Kagami still feels awful that so many of her classmates were so quick to suspect her. To settle the matter, the instructor warns that any actual cheating will inevitably reflect in the final grading of the exams. He then instructs the lower-class student to report to the guidance office later that afternoon. With no other choice, she simply nods, obeying her superior's command. Shortly after, the recess bell rings, but the hostile, tense atmosphere in the classroom remains heavily stacked against the rookie. From the back of the room, an upperclassman scoffs aloud, mocking that their class is genuinely full of complete idiots. The gossiping students keep up the pressure, whispering that cheating means immediate expulsion and that she threw her own future away. They loudly suggest she should just pack up and drop out of school entirely, deeply wounding the student's pride. Witnessing the psychological bullying, Kazuki realizes the scheme has run out of control, as even regular students now deeply distrust her. He concludes that even without a formal expulsion, the crushing peer pressure of the school environment will make it impossible for Kagami to stay. Infuriated by such a blatant injustice, the strategist stands up from his seat, clenching his jaw. The time traveler mutters to himself that the school's pervasive elitist attitude is completely repulsive. Without wasting a single second, he turns around and strides out of the classroom with purpose. Lost in the confusion, his classmate calls out the mage's name, having no idea what he plans to do. Ignoring the crowded hallways, the rookie marches straight toward the gang leader's hideout. With a forceful kick, the boy throws the door wide open, instantly drawing the attention of the hostile group inside. Confronting the faction head-on, he steps inside, ready to demand answers. Seated like royalty in his armchair, Neo smirks, noting that he was already expecting the rookie to show up. Mockingly, the redhead mentions hearing that things got incredibly tense in the classroom, all because of some idiotic cheater. Incensed by his sheer audacity, the protagonist snaps that orchestrating a frame-up like that was an incredibly low blow. With a smug chuckle, the leader scoffs, dismissing the rookie's claims as nothing more than baseless accusations. The upperclassman taunts him, asking if the rookie is genuinely calling honest, upstanding witnesses liars. Maintaining a frigid calm, the mage ironically agrees that it takes an immense amount of courage to expose fraud. However, the boy fires back that hearing that from the mastermind of a widespread cheating ring is the absolute pinnacle of hypocrisy, blindsiding his rival and instantly killing his amusement. Kazuki demands to know if the faction actually possesses a single shred of real evidence against his accused classmate. Quickly regaining his composure, the king of the academy grins, pointing out that the rookie doesn't have any evidence to defend her either. Mercilessly, the bully advises the intruder that he might as well start saying his goodbyes to his lower-class friend. Standing up from his armchair, the redhead decrees that getting expelled and being left with only a basic education in this world is effectively a death sentence for one's future. Looking down, the strategist replies that privileged elites like him know absolutely nothing about the agonizing pain of being discarded by society. Deep within Kazuki's mind, the lingering trauma of suffering that exact same tragic fate in his past life violently resurfaces. Staring at the leader with unbridled fury, the time traveler warns his rival never to cross his path ever again. Amused by such a bold, defiant threat, Neo cracks his knuckles while flashing a twisted, malicious grin. Unleashing his suffocating aura, the king of the academy dares the rookie to try and settle the matter with fists right then and there. Turning his back on him, the mage states he won't get baited into a fight just to risk his own expulsion, but he promises absolute retaliation for his friend. Pointing over his shoulder, he firmly declares that the antagonist will bitterly regret the day he chose to make him an enemy. Later, back in the classroom, the bald instructor dismisses the class for the day. Before exiting, the teacher calls out Kagami's name loudly so the entire room can hear. The man announces that the formal disciplinary investigation is officially underway, ordering her to follow him to the disciplinary office. Completely crushed by the situation, the girl hangs her head in defeat and prepares to follow his order. As she walks past the desks, she hears the gossiping students whispering that this is exactly what happens to trash who don't know their place. Breaking the silence, Kazuki suddenly raises his hand, asking the instructor to hold on for a moment. Stopping at the threshold, the man demands to know what the rookie wants in the middle of all this chaos. Slamming his hands firmly onto his desk, the protagonist announces that he has a formal proposal to submit right now. Caught completely off guard, his classmate turns around, deeply confused by her friend's sudden outburst. Addressing the entire classroom, the mage reminds everyone that absolutely no physical evidence was found to back up the alleged cheating. The instructor nods, but points out that a lack of immediate evidence doesn't automatically clear her, which is why a formal inquiry is mandatory. Interrupting the teacher, Kazuki shocks everyone by stating that he personally suspects Kagami cheated on the exam as well. The words strike the lower-class student like a physical blow, throwing her into an absolute panic over the sudden betrayal by her sole ally. Spinning his absurd theory, the boy suggests that the evidence vanished because his classmate must have used magic to vaporize it on the spot. Raising his voice, the strategist proposes that the faculty run an exhaustive audit of her magical signatures to confirm his theory. Completely bewildered, the girl tearfully stares at her partner while the rest of the class watches the bizarre scene unfold in absolute shock. Connecting the dots, Kagami realizes that her friend's magic bullet was what destroyed the paper, meaning a full magical signature scan would end up incriminating him. The girl is stunned as it finally clicks that Kazuki is intentionally drawing all the suspicion onto himself to shield her. Staring down at her desk, the rookie recognizes that she only survived this far because of him, and resolves that she cannot allow herself to become a burden to him. With that, Kagami suddenly stands up, drawing everyone's attention as she makes a loud declaration to the entire room. The lower-class student loudly announces that this entire cheating allegation is nothing more than a massive misunderstanding. The upperclassman who originally engineered the accusation is left completely bewildered by the sudden shift in narrative. Moments later, several other students step up to defend Kagami, asserting they were sitting right next to her and saw absolutely nothing suspicious. Dumbfounded, the lead accuser turns around, demanding to know why her own co-conspirators are turning on her. However, one of the girls retorts that she wasn't spending the entire exam watching the rookie, reiterating that no physical evidence was found anyway. With that, a consensus sweeps the classroom that it must have been an optical illusion, agreeing that the accused would never be foolish enough to cheat. Cornered with no way out, the ringleader stands frozen, frantically wondering how her foolproof plan completely fell apart. Sensing the immense danger, an accomplice panics and whispers in her ear that things will end horribly for them unless they fix this right now. Desperate to save her own skin, the upperclassman suddenly calls out to the instructor. Bowing deeply over her desk in a cold sweat, the girl offers a loud, dramatic apology for the entire classroom to hear. She invents a story on the fly, claiming she had snooped through Kagami's desk without permission right after the exam ended. Kazuki's classmate watches in blank disbelief as the girl fully commits to her own fabricated confession. The troublemaker claims that the paper she supposedly saw was just a personal study note, completely unrelated to the exam. The instructor adjusts his glasses, thoroughly taken aback by the student's sudden, blatant backpedaling. Putting on a theatrical display, the upperclassman squeezes out tears, claiming she was simply too terrified to speak up once things spiraled out of hand. She bows deeply once more, begging the class and the instructor to forgive her for causing such a massive disruption. Later, as they walk peacefully toward the school gates, the protagonist casually remarks that everything worked out perfectly in the end. Still reeling from the bizarre events in the classroom, Kagami begs her friend to explain what actually went down. She distinctly notes that the fabricated cheat sheet was absolutely hidden inside her drawer. She knows the gangs orchestrated the whole thing, since they were obviously the ones who planted the paper there to begin with. Because of that, the rookie is completely baffled as to why the perpetrators suddenly started defending her out of nowhere. The strategist calmly answers that the underlying logic is actually incredibly simple. He reveals that the upperclassmen themselves would have been completely ruined if the school had actually initiated a full magical ability sweep. Kazuki explains that the faction relies heavily on telepathy magic to broadcast exam answers among its members in real time. Therefore, an extensive magical audit would have triggered a massive chain reaction, exposing their entire cheating network. The mage smiles with satisfaction, noting that their enemies had no choice but to forcefully bury the incident to save their own skins. The time traveler admits he spotted the trap the instant it unfolded, knowing that proving her innocence through normal channels would have been next to impossible. Instead of desperately looking for evidence to clear her name, his strategy focused on forcing the incident closed without needing proof at all. Suddenly, the boy catches the sound of quiet sobbing behind him and comes to a halt. Turning around in concern, he asks his friend what's wrong. Wiping her eyes, Kagami thanks him from the bottom of her heart, confessing she is just crying out of pure relief. Still shaken up, the girl admits she genuinely believed her expulsion was already a done deal. The protagonist listens quietly as his classmate acknowledges that she wouldn't even be standing here if it weren't for his help. Dabbing away the last of her tears, she does her best to steady herself from the intense emotional roller coaster. Offering a reassuring smile, Kazuki tells her not to sweat it, as he simply did what needed to be done. The boy adds that the only thing that truly matters is knowing she is safe and sound. Elsewhere, a lackey enters the clubroom and announces that he has successfully intercepted the rookie's exam results. The lackey approaches and places the stolen documents directly into Neo's hands. Scanning the paperwork, the king of the academy is shocked to find that the rookie secured a perfect score across every single subject. Leaning back in his armchair, the leader acknowledges the enemy's impressive intellect, even though exam difficulties vary across classes. The antagonist notes that securing first place overall on both tests officially grants the boy the right to challenge for a spot in Class A. Weighing his options, Neo realizes that sending low-level thugs and setting amateur traps is completely useless against this target. Tossing the papers into the air, the bully decrees that their only remaining alternative is to utterly crush his opponent using sheer brute force. Flashed a sadistic grin, the antagonist assigns this high-priority hit to a specific executive in his ranks. The man selected for the job is Akira Oshima, the grade 7th ranked elite, specifically called upon due to his reputation as the magic bullet killer. Far away from campus, Kazuki and his classmate are chatting over drinks at a downtown cafe. The girl is completely awestruck to learn that her friend is seriously moving forward with the promotion duel. The protagonist confirms that students who pull the top academic scores earn the official right to challenge Class A. The mage explains that the process requires defeating the 10th-ranked student of the elite class in a formal match, forcing them to swap ranks. Thanks to his flawless performance across both practical tasks and written tests, he has cleared every single prerequisite. Excited, the strategist clenches his fist, fully determined to seize this golden opportunity to climb the academy hierarchy. Kagami leaps up from her chair in excitement, promising to back him up with everything she has. Touched by his friend's unwavering support, the boy offers a warm nod. Taking a sip of his coffee, he states there's absolutely no point in delaying the inevitable, revealing that he intends to submit the challenge today. At first, the girl just smiles, processing his casual statement quite innocently. However, reality hits her a second later, and she lets out a startled shriek as she realizes he has already vanished from the cafe. Walking solo across the campus grounds, the protagonist makes his way toward the academy's combat arena. Checking his phone, he notices that the scheduled time slot for the duel is rapidly approaching. The time traveler notes that since the faction already went after Kagami, the odds of them attempting to sabotage his match are incredibly high. Because of this, his strategy is to strike hard and fast, securing his promotion before the enemy can coordinate any interference. Glancing at his screen, he reviews the profile data of the student currently occupying the 10th spot in Class A. The roster shows his designated opponent is named Taizai. The opponent is a steel armor user who prioritizes impenetrable defenses at the cost of overall mobility. Analyzing him objectively, the mage concludes that the guy is just a scaled-up version of the bully he thoroughly thrashed on his very first day. The boy knows standard attacks won't even scratch him, meaning his best option is to execute a concentrated, full-power strike. Slipping his phone away, he acknowledges that the opponent will be a tough nut to crack, which is to be expected from the elite class. Without a single shred of hesitation, the rookie presses onward, with a focused gaze, determined not to waste any more time. Stepping into the staging corridor of the duel arena, Kazuki finds Akira waiting for him. The protagonist is momentarily puzzled, since Academy regulations state that only the official participants should have access to this sector. Keeping his guard up, the mage bluntly tells the stranger that only the 2 designated combatants are permitted in this area. Maintaining a polite demeanor, Akira smiles and confirms the rule, calmly revealing that he is in fact his opponent for this match. Grasping the situation instantly, the rookie shows no outward signs of surprise. Akira praises the rookie's exceptional mental sharpness. The upperclassman formally introduces himself as the 7th-ranked student of their year. However, he notes with an amused smirk that as of exactly 10 minutes ago, he has taken over the 10th rank. Remaining perfectly calm, Kazuki deduces that his opponent intentionally threw a match just to get demoted. The time traveler realizes the faction manipulated the school's ranking system solely to throw their specialized counter directly into his path. The mage remarks that deploying the magic bullet killer himself proves just how desperate the elite faction is to crush him. The newly minted 10th rank clarifies that he doesn't view the rookie as merely unlucky for having his promotion path blocked. Intrigued, he asks why the rookie dared to decline the faction's invitation, knowing full well it would lead to this outcome. Unfazed, the protagonist counters with his own question, asking what the opponent actually thinks of his own faction. After a brief pause, Akira admits the syndicate isn't exactly fair, but notes he still finds their setup highly beneficial. Debunking the point, the strategist asks if he truly believes that buying temporary safety by serving as someone else's lackey is ever enough. With absolute conviction, the mage points out that their core values are fundamentally incompatible. Kazuki answers his earlier inquiry, declaring that his ultimate ambition could never be realized by acting as a gang lapdog. Born with only bottom-tier magic, he knows that just scraping together decent grades will never suffice for what he wants to achieve. The protagonist grants that the faction's network is excellent at securing safe, passable scores for all its members. However, the mage requires flawlessly perfect marks across the board to offset his massive natural deficit. Laser-focused on his target, he states that joining the upperclassmen offers him absolutely zero practical value. Scratching his head, his opponent confesses he cannot comprehend what kind of dream could possibly be worth risking immediate expulsion over. Cutting him off cleanly, Kazuki snaps that he isn't looking for validation or understanding from anyone. Right then, the automated arena voice officially announces the start of the rank-up match, prompting both to drop into their combat stances. Akira states that he absolutely loathes taking risks, preferring a secure life dictated by predictable outcomes. With a grim look, the veteran warns him that whatever happens to him next will be the direct consequence of his own choices. Exuding supreme confidence, the rookie counters that he won't hold any grudges, since he intends to leave the arena victorious. The match officially kicks off with both duelists squared away in the center ring. Without wasting a single breath, the mage unleashes a rapid barrage to keep his opponent from setting up a defense. However, the spells slam harmlessly against a pale green barrier that shields the target perfectly, leaving him completely untouched. His opponent scoffs, asking if the rookie seriously thought his defensive line would be wide open at the start of the match. Akira flaunts his absolute protection, boasting that standard magical blasts cannot hope to touch him. Following that effortless show of force, the 10th rank advises the rookie to wake up and face reality. The veteran coldly reiterates to the time traveler that he shouldn't blame him for how brutally this match ends. Up in the grand arena stands, a handful of students gather to witness the high-stakes duel. Clasping her hands together tightly, Kagami watches the ring, deeply anxious over her partner's massive disadvantage. Right then, a murmur ripples through the spectating students, as 2 incredibly famous figures walk into the stands. A girl with striking platinum hair and a boy wearing glasses casually stroll over to the premium seating area. The student with glasses notes with mild surprise that this is the first time his companion has ever shown interest in a low-tier duel. Apathetic, the spectator vaguely replies that she doesn't have any specific motive for dropping by. The boy accepts his companion's evasive response without pressing the matter any further. In reality, Priya simply wants to observe how a fundamentally constrained mage plans to handle the magic bullet killer. Taking his seat comfortably, the elite student settles in to enjoy the show. Back in the ring, the protagonist analyzes the barrier structure, recognizing it as an automated defensive skill. The mage admits aloud that possessing an autonomous barrier generator is an incredibly useful ability. Probing for a vulnerability, he fires several split shots from multiple angles to bypass the barrier's tracking. However, the veteran warns him that scattering his firepower is completely useless against an advanced auto-defense system. Realizing his scatter tactics won't cut it, Kazuki conjures an energy firearm into his grip. Manifesting his own green-tinted armament, the opponent declares that it's now his turn to go on the offensive. Kazuki shapes his magic into a defensive construct, fully aware that attempting to tank the shots head-on is a losing game. He angles his shield precisely to deflect the incoming projectiles rather than absorbing their full kinetic force. Capitalizing on the opening created by the deflections, the time traveler blitzes forward to close the gap. In the stands, Kagami cheers for his advance, knowing that once he is close enough, her friend can focus entirely on destructive power. Closing into point-blank range, the strategist fires a highly dense, concentrated blast tailored specifically for armor piercing. The connection triggers a violent detonation of blue energy, right against the target's position. Even so, the magic bullet killer casually states that he deployed a manual reinforced barrier in tandem. The heavy secondary wall stops the deadly attack dead in its tracks without showing a single scratch. The rookie's friend is horrified to see that his absolute strongest offensive output was completely neutralized. Taunting him, the veteran asks if he genuinely believed that getting past his first line of defense would guarantee a win. Acknowledging his opponent's unconventional threat level, Akira reestablishes his distance and stacks up a multi-layered barrier defense. Refusing to back down, the mage slides across the ring, firing a ricochet shot off the floor to create an unpredictable trajectory. Tracking the incoming ricochet, the 10th rank simply steps to the side, noting that the projectile is far too slow. With a single nonchalant sidestep, the elite student evades the spell without even forcing his barriers to engage. Up in the stands, the platinum-haired viewer picks up on the hidden trajectory of the deflected shot and anticipates the real play. However, the surprise looping shot aiming for the opponent's blind spot hits his passive auto-shield and fails. The rookie mutters under his breath, deeply frustrated to see his custom surprise play shut down so effortlessly. Perfectly secure behind his shields, the veteran reveals he anticipated this setup after studying the rookie's previous combat logs and decoding his habits. He explains that his autonomous barrier triggers instantly, reacting even to high-velocity strikes that escape his own vision. Because of that absolute trait, the enemy boasts that surprise attacks and blind spot insertions will never work on him. Locking down his concentration, the protagonist utilizes his tuning technique to rapidly alter the fundamental matrix of his magic. He fires an extremely dense beam of concentrated blue energy, aiming directly for his opponent's core barrier. With raw, overwhelming pressure, the beamed energy shatters the stacked defensive layers, completely shocking the 10th-ranked elite. Kagami cheers in absolute jubilation from the benches, watching her friend successfully puncture the supposedly unbreakable defense. The impact scores a direct hit on the veteran's chest, forcing his frame back a few paces. Yet, Akira merely stares down at his chest in mild surprise, casually commenting that he was briefly startled. Brushing the dust off his uniform entirely uninjured, he reveals that he also possesses an innate, high-level passive magic resistance. Looking down at the heavily panting rookie, his opponent asks if he finally understands the insurmountable chasm between their respective powers. The elite student declares that even if his projectiles manage to bypass the shields, they lack the raw damage output required to claim victory. The upperclassman spectating alongside Priya watches the unfolding confrontation in sheer astonishment. Inside the ring, the opponent admits he never anticipated such technical proficiency from a mage limited to standard baseline magic. Akira concludes that the rookie would have been a terrifying threat if he wasn't bottlenecked by a single skill in his arsenal. Raising his weapon, the elite student asserts that he maintains a 99% probability of winning if the duel keeps to this current trajectory. Still confident in his victory, he takes a step back, muttering that he can't afford to let his guard down for a single second. With that, the 10th-ranked fighter decides to maintain a safe distance, focusing entirely on wearing down the rookie until time runs out. Laser-focused on his goal, the veteran acknowledges that his opponent is on another level, prompting him to play it completely safe and ensure a flawless victory. Meanwhile, Kazuki defends against a relentless barrage of attacks, feeling the suffocating pressure of the combat. Watching the battle unfold, Kagami grows anxious, as she sees her partner being pushed back by the relentless force of the magic bullet killer. She tightly clasps her hands against her chest, silently praying that her friend won't be defeated. As he blocks the incoming blows, the time traveler quickly sees through the enemy's strategy to keep him from closing the distance. The strategist reflects that any proud mage would already be losing their mind, desperate at the fact that they're locked in a stalemate with someone from the lower class. Realizing he can't breach the defenses from a distance, the kid knows he'll eventually pass out from exhaustion if he keeps giving ground. Right then, the protagonist decides to unleash his ultimate trump card to shatter his opponent's ironclad guard. Gearing up for an immediate counterattack, Kazuki concentrates a massive amount of energy into his fingertips. Without wasting a single second, the rookie unleashes a mysterious shot utilizing his invisible style. Stunned by the sudden absence of light and any visible trace of the attack, Akira is left utterly bewildered about what just happened. Focused entirely on his offensive, the mage maintains his stance, aiming flawlessly at his target. Shocked, the 10th-ranked student notices that the energy bullet vanished completely into thin air. A split second later, a violent impact slams into the veteran's shoulder, staggering him backward. Clutching his throbbing wound, he struggles to comprehend how he could have actually been hit by a rookie's basic attack. Kazuki calmly reveals that he utilized his tuning technique to make his magical power completely imperceptible. Explaining that the skill name has become literal, the protagonist launches into a brutal volley of phantom shots. Noticing the shift in his opponent's stance, the magic bullet killer braces himself for the next wave of impending strikes. Quickly raising his manual barrier, the elite student is confident he can block anything by calculating its trajectory. Yet another explosive burst of damage tears into his other shoulder, leaving his shield completely useless against the assault. Driven to absolute despair, the veteran panics, frantically questioning why his absolute defense is failing him. Staring at his own barrier remaining flawlessly intact, he realizes the shots didn't even attempt to break through his protective layers. The opponent soon realizes the terrifying truth, watching in horror as the strikes pass freely through his shields, as if they didn't even exist, utterly unable to cope with the overwhelming pressure. Akira is ruthlessly slammed into the ground. Struggling to his feet, the veteran confirms that his automatic shield is entirely useless against spells that phase through matter. Preparing the final blow of the match, the time traveler points his outstretched fingers like a loaded gun ready to fire. Cornering his hunched foe, the mage jeers, noting that when the dust settled, his adversary couldn't counter his magic at all. Intent on an absolute victory, the boy turns the elite student's own title against him to prove who truly rules the arena. Pressing his fingertip directly against the target's forehead, the strategist points out that trying to deploy barriers at point-blank range is utterly pointless. The rookie declares that even passive resistances won't withstand the raw force of unmitigated direct damage. Right after, a massive blast configured exclusively for maximum penetration hits the 10th-ranked student squarely in the chest. Writhing in agonizing pain, the defeated elite rolls violently across the cold floor of the battlefield. After skidding across the ground, the magic bullet killer finally loses consciousness, smoke billowing from his scorched clothes. At that exact moment, the arena system confirms the protagonist's overwhelming victory, making his ascent toward the top ranks official. Up in the packed stands, the student crowd plunges into a dead silence, struggling to process the downfall of someone so powerful. Looking down at his fallen, defeated opponent, Kazuki mutters a brief, detached apology. The time traveler reaffirms to himself that failure at the very beginning of his climb was never an option. An uproar breaks out among the students once more, their stunned shouts echoing as they try to comprehend how those impossible strikes even worked. Meanwhile, an elite spectator evaluates the newly displayed technique with curiosity, finding the strategy rather intriguing. Analyzing the fine details of the match that just concluded, the youth praises the sheer genius behind such a masterfully crafted and executed tactic. Priya, the student seated beside him, reveals to them that the rookie never actually fired anything genuinely invisible. The girl deduces that the barriers would have triggered automatically if the shots were merely a visual camouflage illusion. Recalling how Akira's barrier functions, she explains that it only deploys when a physical threat breaches the designated danger zone. Listening closely to her analysis, the veteran spectator understands that Kazuki's basic magic completely bypassed the detection sensors. Losing interest, he decides not to dwell on the subject further. The girl gets up from her seat, flatly announcing her departure. Sticking to his usual routine, her companion straightens up and announces that he is also heading back to attend to his own business. Before walking away, Both cast a long look at the victor in the arena, accepting the reality that they will have a new classmate starting tomorrow. With an ominous anticipation, the student whispers that he can't wait to test the protagonist's capabilities in their new environment. Later on, near the walkways of the student dorms, the duo of friends meet up to debrief on the day's battles. Radiating contagious joy, Kagami ecstatically celebrates her partner's success, who has now climbed to the upper echelons of the school hierarchy. Taking in his refreshed look, her friend sincerely remarks on how sharp the tie of his new class uniform looks on him. A bit flustered by the sudden compliment, the mage scratches his cheek, looking away while sheepishly agreeing with her. Taking advantage of the quiet moment, Kazuki expresses his deep gratitude for the unwavering support she provided throughout the entire ordeal. The youth humbly admits that his class advancement wouldn't have gone nearly as smoothly without her constant encouragement. Flustered by his words, the student waves her hands in frantic denial, insisting that she is actually the one who owes him everything in their partnership. Recalling the day he saved her from a brutal, unprovoked assault, Kagami expresses the profound relief she felt when she accepted her hero's hand. Even though she knows they will now be separated by the school's strict social divides, she promises from the bottom of her heart to keep cheering him on every single day. Touched by his friend's loyalty, the strategist reciprocates her warmth with another gentle thank you, but his tone instantly shifts to a serious note, warning her that while the enemy faction shouldn't dare target her anymore, she must let him know immediately if anything goes wrong. Blushing at his protective demeanor, the student lowers her gaze, expressing her endless gratitude for the bond they've forged. Summoning her resolve, she confidently assures the time traveler that she will manage just fine on her own. The girl firmly declares that from now on, she intends to work harder than ever, relying on her own strength to overcome daily obstacles. Inspired by the mage's drive, her primary goal shifts to graduating from the academy with absolute honor and pride. Fully agreeing with her sentiment, Kazuki proposes that they both continue giving it their all, regardless of the distance between them. Solidifying their renewed commitment to support one another, the two friends share a firm, spirited handshake. The following day, the rookie strides confidently through the upper corridors, heading entirely alone into uncharted territory. Pausing at the door of his new classroom, the protagonist has a fleeting flashback, realizing he had never once set foot inside this place during his past life. The moment he pushes the heavy door open, he gets a slight jolt as a painfully familiar voice abruptly calls out to him. Leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, Neo was waiting for his rival with the explicit intent of giving him the worst possible welcome. Eyeing the newcomer, Neo takes it upon himself to introduce the classroom, claiming that this is the elite special honors hall. The faction leader remarks that the rookie's timing for a promotion couldn't have been more perfect, leaving the protagonist deeply intrigued. Cutting straight to the chase, his rival warns him that the main class will be undergoing a special examination the very next day. Stepping forward intimidatingly, the veteran reveals that the exam will serve to select the official representatives for the academy. Hearing this, the time traveler weighs the gravity of the situation, realizing that their direct showdown has finally arrived. With a fierce glare, Neo reassures him that he will personally take care of crushing the rookie into dust.